Oh, yeah. You already know what time it is, DJ Nation fam. It's the Week 4 NFL DFS breakdown from the TFA, powered by the TFA and the DJ Nation. What's going on? I'm your host, one of your two co-hosts for tonight, Ryan Williams. You can find me on Twitter at RyanAlexander_W, and I'm joined by 1/3 of the podcast, Mr. Matty Dickinson at Matty DFS. Kevin is missing 2 shows this year, Matty. After missing 0, missing 2. Can you believe it?
I can't. He talks a big game. Every time we get on the pod, he's like, Ryan, Matt, I've never missed a show in my entire career. And you guys just, you come and go as you want. And I'm here every week doing the show. And, I'm always going to be here. And, where is he? But, hey, that's okay. He's sending to family things. So I guess we'll allow it. We'll let it slide.
Yeah, we'll definitely allow it. And man, what an impression there. We definitely have to get that audio cut up of you doing Kev. Hilarious. For the DJ Nation that's joining us, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We're a little bit earlier, as usual, back to our regularly scheduled programming here on a Thursday. We're trying to get this in at halftime, but you know what? This game is just ass right now. It's booty. Big booty Judy catching the touchdown, the only thing saving this game from what it is. So we decided to start early. NFL Week 4 breakdown here for DFS. Guys, if you're watching us, YouTube, Periscope, Facebook, or listening to the pod, we appreciate you. Guys, subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Just type in the Fantasy Authority. We appreciate that. Go and like the video. You can leave a comment. You can tell us, we're going too long. You can tell us our audio is low, as I know that last week that happened. You can tell us that we're doing well. Hey, we've had some good picks over the past week, not last week with the giant stack that some were touting here on this channel, but we definitely have some fun there. So we want you guys interacting with us. Social channel at DJ Nation Pod is where you can find us on Twitter. If you're watching, you see all the Fantasy Authority channels there. Basically, the Fantasy Authority on everything, but FF_authority there for Twitter. Matty, let's not waste any time. Let's get into this slate here for Week 4. I think we got a fun one, right? We got some ugly to talk about, right? The COVID virus has struck in the NFL. We've seen it strike in the MLB, not so much in the NBA, but we're going to get a postponement from the Titans and Steelers game. So that game is pretty much washed. Pretty much the smart decision, it seems like. We'll just move it on, give these guys bye weeks and figure it out from there. The main thing is being safe. But a lot of we just got a weird slate here, Matty, because we've got enough under our belt now where we can figure out situations for sure to target off of 2020. We're not really going off of 2019 data anymore. You shouldn't be. You can toss those out the window now because we have a large enough sample size that we have. And then just the pricing overall, I feel like for the slate, I haven't looked too much into FanDuel all that much, but Draftkings especially, I thought did a great job with their pricing from the overall slate. So let's kind of talk. Before we get into our usual breakdowns, Matty, I just kind of want to touch on something from last week. And I think we tout ourselves as being a contrarian podcast in general, right? Like we look at things from DFS perspective that would open up things from a tournament perspective. We don't really talk all that much about cash, but we do talk about strong plays. We try not to get people on plays that would blow up their lineups or that we wouldn't be willing to play ourselves. And one of the main things from last week was the Dallas and Seattle game just went absolutely bananas. And we talked about that game just in the sense that that's going to be popular and we have to get pieces from that game, but not really. We're starting out with these 4 or 5 players and just going from there. And these are, you should definitely get exposure to this game and move on elsewhere. So I felt like if you didn't have that game last week in your DFS lineups, basically from a main build, you weren't cashing. I mean, because Russell Wilson is going absolutely nuclear. Dak Prescott is in game scripts where he has to be forced to go nuclear. And it just seems like every time these two teams are going to be on a slate, we're going to have some exposure to him. So I opened that up for this week 4 because we have a ton of games here that Vegas is projecting to go berserk when we have only seen a couple handfuls. So what do you think about the slate from an overall perspective? Are you looking at it from you need to be targeting games specifically, or can we feel comfortable with getting a couple guys in good spots and starting from there?
So, I mean, it all goes back to the types of contests you're playing, right? So if you're in more of like the bigger large field tournaments, you're going to want to have more exposure to full game stacks. Whereas if you're in smaller field tournaments, you're going to want to be closer to the optimal build with a couple pivots here and there. And usually an optimal build is not, hey, let me load up on this game and hope there's 70 points scored. Usually an optimal is like, okay, let me fit in the best 2 or 3 running backs. Who's the best value, 1 or 2 value wide receivers? Let me get a good tight end and go from there. Right. Whereas in large field tournaments, if a game goes for like 75 or 80 points, like we've seen the last couple of weeks, you've almost got to game stack it to have a shot to take down a tournament, because usually there's a couple guys, 3 or 4 different guys who are in the 20s, and then you usually get a couple 30-point guys as well.
Right.
So it really does depend on the contest that you're playing in and the size of the field. So I definitely think that that's a big aspect to it. But we will talk about some game stacks. There's definitely a couple under the radar ones. Like you said, there's 8 totals over 50 this week.
Yeah, man.
So there's definitely a lot to like, and it's a great week to be a little bit different from the field.
Yeah, and that's really what we pride ourselves on. I mean, we've done seasons where every week we're putting a team into the millie and kind of just chasing that, and we want you guys to feel confident in being able to go out there, win that money, chase down a big GPP, get plays that people aren't talking about that are in good spots and can be contrarian. So let's open it up, Matty, with the quarterback position, because I really think this is where it gets interesting. Looking through the show notes here that we put together for the show, and I was loving the first name that you put in from a quarterback perspective. So let's kind of just talk about the plays that we have written down, and then we can open it up as a main forum for the quarterback overview. So, I open up the doc, I see that you have Ryan Fitzpatrick down, and I'm like, dude, let's go. Because the more I'm looking at this matchup, the more I'm just loving the fact that game script dependent, we're going to get a Ryan Fitzpatrick out here who's just going to have to throw. And even a guy like Myles Gaskin being there at running back, you're not really thinking that they're going to try and get this guy, 20, 25 carries going against the Seattle team. Like we just saw that from, or not just saw that, but we just saw from Zeke on the side of Dallas going against the Seattle team. That's Zeke, right? And he's only seeing 14 carries. So I have no reason to believe that unless the Dolphins are up heavy, that this is going to be a Myles Gaskin just run rampant game as we saw against Jacksonville. So you love Fitzpatrick here. You gotta like the price on DraftKings. I'll pull it up, but I know it's cheap in the $5,000 range.
54 maybe
54. You gotta love that,
somewhere around there.
Yeah, 54. You're right, Matty. And it's a home matchup there. And you're talking about a narrow enough distribution of targets from his pass catchers. So I absolutely love that. I definitely want you to dive in on that for your plays. I think Russell Wilson, just what he's doing every week, this guy's in play. 14 touchdowns through the first 3 games. What he's doing right now is just unheard of. So if you're playing cash or you want to start your builds there, because he does have a narrow distribution of targets as well. And especially with Byron Jones, I'm not sure where he is at on the injury report, Matty. I know he's missed the past 2 weeks, or he missed part of week 2 and then all of week 3. So that's worrisome. They have some corners who are definitely attackable over there. So I love talking about the Seattle pass catchers later on. Jared Goff finds himself in a good spot this week. If you're not buying into Darrell Henderson, maybe if you're thinking Cam Akers can come back and be healthy. I'm not sure where he's looking at the injury report, but Jared Goff could definitely pay off his price tag as he comes in at 6,700 going against the Giants. I mean, we're just targeting everybody against this Giants defense right now. That's abysmal. And the other guy is Patrick Mahomes that I want to talk about. And I'm not sure what you're looking at as far as ownership projections this early on, Matty. But when I was looking at Pro Football Focus and what they have on ownerships, and this is, people who are just making early lineups, probably for the Thursday slates and everything like that. But Mahomes was still down there, under 10% ownership. And I just couldn't believe it after the matchup that we just saw against the Ravens on the road. And now this guy gets to be in a home matchup. Now it's against New England. And so if you're worried about the New England defense, I guess, I can't blame you, but this isn't the same defense that we saw. They kind of were starting to give up points late against the Raiders, even though I talked about playing that defense in an article last week. But I love Patty Mahomes from a GPP perspective. I think you can definitely play him against this defense. You're not really worried about if you get the stat correctly, because we've seen just on Monday, he's throwing to the linemen, he's throwing to running backs, he's throwing to Tyreek Hill, Mecole Hardman gets you some. And then if they take away Kelsey, they're still explosive guys. So I like Pat Mahomes, but it really has to start with Fitzpatrick this week, Matty. We got people in the chat. Will McNeil, shout out to you, man, talking about he can't play Ryan Fitzpatrick on chalk week. I'm not sure where his ownership prices are coming in, but I just know that it can't be chalk at this point, I don't think. And I still like getting exposure to him.
I've got him. I'm looking at, let's see, where is he at? He's in like the third tier of ownership.
Okay.
Like the 5 to 7% range is what I'm looking at right now. Obviously that might change as more content comes out. Friday's usually a big content day. So you definitely could see his ownership pop up a little bit. And I mean, he really is the best value quarterback on the board. I mean, no matter how you slice it. I mean, you look at who Seattle has gone up against. I know they've played really good quarterbacks through the first 3 weeks, but they give up 472 and 3 to Dak. Cam threw for 397, who we know Cam is not a passing quarterback. He's a run-first quarterback. He threw for 397, got Edelman a career high in receiving yards, had 1 passing touchdown, 2 rushing touchdowns, and then Matt Ryan threw for 450 and 2. So you're looking at 3 guys who basically threw for over 397 yards in 3 straight weeks. And the thing with Seattle this week is Chris Carson's banged up. He's been practicing limited. Carlos Hyde is banged up. He's been practicing limited. And the Seahawks have shown a willingness to turn to a pass-first offense this year. So I don't see a way that Seattle says, let's slow this train down. We're just going to run the football this game, because their running backs are banged up, and that's not how they've played the first 3 games. So I think that there's going to be – like Seattle's going to continue to put up points, and we've seen that their secondary is not very good. And we know Ryan Fitzpatrick, if there's one thing he can do, it's throw for a lot of yards, throw for touchdowns, and he's going to throw a couple interceptions. Like, that's just what he does. He slings the rock, doesn't care. He stretches the ball down the field. Devontae Parker's got a great matchup. Those outside corners in Seattle are not good. The slot receiver is not, or the slot corner is not good. So you can literally pick apart them from any way you want. And Mike Gesicki's, we know that he plays big slot. He's not really an inline tight end. So I just don't see, and like you said, the pass catchers, we know where the ball's going in Miami. It's going to Parker and Gesicki and occasionally Preston Williams, though he's kind of, he's still coming back from that knee injury from last year. And he's actually gotten the top cornerbacks from the other team. So the first few weeks. So this limited him as well. But 2, I mean, like Miami has only wanted to slow the game down when they're playing from in front. When they're playing from behind, Fitzpatrick chucks. And I just don't see, playing in smaller field stuff, go with a Fitzpatrick, Parker, Gesicki stack and just be different somewhere else on your team, because I do think that is the optimal stack at a low cost this week that can let you pay up for some more optimal running backs that we'll talk about that cost you a pretty penny. But man, Fitz just looks really good. I agree that it can feel a bit scary trying to play him when he's more popular, but I just don't see – I mean, even Vegas thinks that they're going to do well because it is I've got a 53.5 total with only a 6.5 point spread. So Vegas thinks it's a 1-score game and a high total. So, I mean, to me, that tells me Miami's going to be able to keep up. And I don't disagree because of what Seattle's defense has shown us this year.
Yeah, you can't get away from the passing in this spot. I don't feel like. And Will's in the chat asking about, is it a good play to kind of go to Carson if he's healthy out there. And I don't listen. I played Carson last week. I had some exposure to him just because I like to get leverage plays, and I realized that I was doing pretty much a very heavy build of Russell Wilson or Dak Prescott lineups. And on those Wilson teams, I was playing Wilson and Carson, or just trying to get some exposure to Carson. I had a lot of Carson wins, and so by playing that game, I was like, okay, let me get Carson exposure there. But the passing volume is just so incredible right now that it's just so hard to overlook. And they're passing; it doesn't matter whether they're in the red zone or not. They're letting Russ cook. Let Russ cook, right?
They're passing on early downs. That's the biggest change that they've made this year, because usually it's been 2 runs and now it's 3rd and 7, and Russ has to pass on 3rd down. But now it's let's just drop back to pass from 1st down, and Russ he's not even getting to 3rd downs like that. It's just how efficient he's been, and it's so stupid like how good that offense is.
It's crazy. And then, you come in and this year it's all about, Seattle's run heavy. And I know the chance about Russell being having an MVP year, getting the MVP vote. So it just, until they show that it's a letdown spot from the Seattle passing attack, I think we just have to keep going back to that fold, especially when you're getting plus matchups on the other side. And there's ways that they could take advantage of that. And they're traveling on the road here. It's not a home game for them. It's a home game for Miami. And, things are just weird. And if for some reason, Miami takes one to the house on the special teams or something like that, there's just so many different ways that it could happen with the game. But you like having Russ on that side. Matty, you wrote down a couple other guys that I'm interested in talking about from the slate. And for those of you who are watching on YouTube, you probably saw the thumbnail video clip there of OBJ on the screen. And so that means that Baker is one of the quarterbacks that you're looking to target this week. Now, for those of you who don't know, OBJ, it looks like is popping up on the injury report for Thursday. So we'll definitely have to monitor that. I think it's a back. But if he's, out there willing to go, are you still interested in getting some Baker in that Dallas game?
Absolutely, because for all the same reasons we just mentioned why we like the Dolphins pass attack is the same reasons I like the Browns pass attack. You've got a 56 total and only a 4.5 point spread. So Vegas thinks that game's going to shoot out and it's going to be close. And we know that the way you beat both defenses so far for Cleveland and Dallas is through the air. Both teams have been respectable on the ground. Now, Dallas hasn't really played a really good running back yet, like Nick Chubb. So I do kind of, maybe am slightly concerned that the Browns could just, especially if Kareem Hunt is out, I think the Browns could just come out and say, we're 25 to 30 Nick Chubb carries. He's going to run for 170 yards and 2 or 3 touchdowns. I absolutely could see the scenario where that happens. And if that does, you're not getting the Baker ceiling game. However, if Dallas comes out and gets out to an early 14-point lead, which is very possible playing at home in the Dome, you all of a sudden have to abandon the run game. And we have seen Dallas's secondary so far. It's just like the Seattle secondary. It's non-existent. Right. And so
and a lot of injuries on that side too.
Yeah. So they're missing 2 starting corners. They still have Diggs, who's a rookie. So he'll likely get to go up against OBJ probably on that when he's on the outside. But even Landry in the slot has a great matchup. You can target Dallas with tight ends, even though we haven't seen much out of Hooper really. It's just the Dallas defense is basically non-existent. And another big name you got to monitor in that game is DeMarcus Lawrence. If he's out, the splits with him off the field it's like the efficiency goes way up because now you don't have corners, but now you also don't have a pass rush. So it's like Baker will literally be able to do whatever he wants, assuming OBJ is healthy. It's kind of scared me a little bit that OBJ popped up in the middle of a week on an injury report. But that's definitely something you want to keep an eye on. It's just like the Kenny Golladay situation in week 1. If OBJ is limited on a Friday, that's a bad sign because Fridays are generally just your walkthroughs, very light practices. If he's a full and they're saying he's ready to go, then I'm not going to look too much into his back injury, considering, he played with an injury last year that he should have gotten surgery for. So he's played through injuries. So I really do like that Browns passing attack, especially if DeMarcus Lawrence is out. And I would like to see Kareem Hunt in there just so the Browns aren't as reluctant to just send Nick Chubb out there 25 to 30 times. But even if he's out there, running back becomes really, really tough to navigate through because there's already 2 guys at the top who I am just, going to push the lock button and not even turn and look back. So,
Team jam them in this week.
Team jam them in this week. We'll talk about that when we get there. But yeah, the Browns. I think you're going to see no ownership on this Browns air attack because we've seen Baker in prime time already against the Bengals, and people are just like looking at Baker's past game logs and they're like, Baker's not going to he's got no ceiling. But I think in this matchup, this is a rare occurrence where we could see Baker throw for over 300 yards and a couple scores.
No, that I hear you, and you're looking at that price tag there at 5,800. That is it's easy to swallow there on a site like DraftKings, especially. There's 2 guys who are in this range, Matty. So I want to talk about this range, and we could talk about a cheap one if there's a guy that sticks out there. But if we're looking within the 60, let's see, so 6,600 to 5,900 there, we got the likes of Deshaun Watson, who I didn't put on the list here, but he's got a game against Minnesota. He's the
mega chalk.
Yeah, Minnesota's secondary is one that you could target. He is mega chalk, and you're looking at these numbers, but you're looking at the defenses that he's faced too, right, Matty? He's at Pittsburgh, home against Baltimore, at Kansas City. Like, it's been a tough start for this Houston team, and this Minnesota team, while the secondary has been one, and I've written it up 2 weeks now in a row, they're hedging points to these running backs. So, you could get maybe leverage by going David Johnson on him if you think if he's going to be chalk and, he's not going to pay off that price tag at 6,600. But I do kind of, I think he's interesting. Cam Newton going against Kansas City. We've seen him and when he needs to throw, right? So going against Seattle, 44 pass attempts, and they needed to kind of lean on Cam to kind of get them back in the game. But against Vegas and Miami, they were kind of just able to do whatever they want, have their way on the ground. Sony Michel's getting 100 yards rushing on 9 carries last week. Rex Burkhead 3 touchdowns. It's ridiculous. So if they're in a game like that, they're not going to need Cam. But now you're looking at traveling to KC. He's 6,400. You're not really. The passing situation worries me with Cam, but just the red zone usage is incredible. So he could pay off just by you playing him naked, and he could still get you the 25 points, 30 points that you're looking for with only 1 or 2 passing touchdowns. And you're really hoping for 2 because he's gotten 38 with only 1 touchdown, 25 with no passing touchdowns. That is, as I'm saying that. So he's interesting. But the 2 guys that you wrote down were Burrow and Stafford. Now, Burrow is going against Jacksonville, Stafford going against New Orleans. Aaron Rodgers just lit up this New Orleans team. I saw Marshawn Lattimore was on the injury report with a hamstring, I believe. So he's out. You're definitely loving that. Joe Burrow going against Jacksonville, which Fitzpatrick was just able to have his way against them. So I like these calls, Matty. Talk to me about these guys.
Yeah, so, it keeps going back to these defenses I want to attack this week have been more pass funnels than the other teams' defenses that we're seeing where quarterbacks are in good matchups. So you've got New Orleans, who we know for the last few years, they've been a top run defense in the NFL. Well, we've seen, like you said, this year, we've seen New Orleans just get gashed through the air. Aaron Rodgers last week, with no Devontae Adams, was still out there just chucking the ball around. Lazard had a 130-yard day and scored a touchdown, and it was just he had his way. So and especially with Lattimore, he was limited yesterday and was downgraded to a DNP today. So it's not looking good for his prospects to playing. And the Lions, they got Galladay back last week, and so he had no setbacks, and he's ready to go again this week. I mean, you're not going to be able to run the ball against New Orleans, and you've got Matt Stafford, who we know can throw the football as good as anyone in the NFL, and he's got those weapons who are affordable in DFS. Kenny Galladay $6K, and Marvin Jones is $4,900. And then you even got Hawkinson, who's pretty cheap. And we've seen New Orleans just get shredded by tight ends through the first few weeks. So it's targeting these pass funnels that nobody's going to be on in games that are projected to be really high scoring, which this is another one. Vegas has it at 54.5 and a 4.5 point spread. And I really, really like the full-blown game stack here if Michael Thomas is back too. Because you can go MT at 7,600. I don't know the last time we've seen him at that cheap of a price. Right. Kamara, that's ridiculous. Kamara's team jam him in this week. And then you get all the Saints points basically, and then on the other side you run it back with Stafford, Galladay, and Marvin Jones, and even Hawkinson. And there's a Saints tight end we'll talk about too if Jared Cook is out. But
I saw that. I like it a lot.
Yeah. So. It's just in Jacksonville and Cincinnati is the same exact way. Cincinnati and Jacksonville have both limited teams. Cincinnati not as much, but Jacksonville's limited teams on the ground. Jacksonville ranks 6th in adjusted line yards on defense, 10th in second level yards allowed, and 8th in open field yards. So they've been a very quiet, good run defense this year. And I think a lot of people are just going to say, they're going to mistakenly say, oh, Joe Mixon versus Jacksonville, this is a great matchup to have a big game on the ground. And that's not been the case. Jacksonville has been a much, much, much worse defense against the pass than they have against the run. And we know Cincinnati's defense is not good. So you've got a 49 points total here and a 3-point spread. So another high scoring close game. And I just think, Cincinnati's got a pass funnel situation here on offense. And we know that Jacksonville can put up points on their side of the board as well, considering Cincinnati's defense is very bad. So you've got another shootout potential here at basically no ownership.
Yeah, and you're loving the attempts from the kid too. 44, 61, 36. Yeah. Even in games where they're controlling. I mean, 36 attempts in a game that only scores 29 total points. That's ridiculous in that week one. Now
he's got rushing upside too.
Right. And the rushing upside, exactly. So that is a nice. I like that a lot in that game, in that home matchup, because I do see people talking about Mixon and just the way that running back kind of shapes up. I don't know that I'll really have much of any Mixon this week because he kind of has to. He's cheap, but he needs to prove it to me first before I'm willing to put him in with.
It's not the matchup. I think he's going to be he's going to be way too popular, and it's not the matchup.
I agree. Just real quick before we move on to the running back position, Matty, as we're talking about Mixon there, Will was asking in the chat that he's kind of seems like the Cardinals, did enough to limit the wide receivers for the Lions there, and AP got going. Do we think that the Lions are trying to limit how much Matthew Stafford throws, or is it just that? Just the way that the game kind of played out there for them, and we shouldn't be worried about that against the Saints team.
No, so I think a big reason as to why that game played out the way it did is because Kyler Murray threw 2 or 3 interceptions and kept turning the ball back over to the Lions. So the Lions were able to control the clock the entire game, basically. Especially if Michael Thomas plays, I don't see how the Saints end up trailing at any point in this game unless, the Lions come out hot. And even if the Lions come out hot, the Saints can score points immediately right back because of how bad the Lions defense is. And that how many times do we see New Orleans just shuts down opposing run games? That's what they do. If the Lions want to run AP into the Saints defensive front over and over and over again, they're going to lose by 35 points. Like, that's fine. I will bet against that happening because the way the Lions have success is through the air in this game. And I just don't think that they can control the game like they did last week at Arizona. And that was because Kyler Murray kept turning the ball over.
I hear you, Matty. Let's move it on to running backs here and kind of talk about this position. And it's very, man, I mean, you're getting Alvin Kamara at the top on DraftKings at 8K, which the prices were already set, but man, does that feel way too cheap for what we just saw him do against the Packers. And then Dalvin Cook, Matty, your guy last week, who you talked about, paid off dividends there. He fumbled to start off, but definitely got there on the usage. He's 7,600 going against Houston, a team that we can target running backs against. And then sandwiched between them is Ezekiel Elliott, who we talked about it with quarterback. He didn't really need that many, or he didn't see that many rushing attempts in the game where they were forced to be throwing at Seattle. But you're looking at the touches here in 22 carries against Atlanta, 22 against the Rams, and he's getting pass catching work, Matty, which I like to see. 6 targets, I believe, in back-to-back games there. So you're going against a Cleveland team here. He's only 7,800, which I feel like Zeke at that price is just kind of cheap for what he can kind of pay off for you. He is going to be popular, but I feel comfortable in getting to him and maybe even getting some Dak and Zeke exposure this week. But kind of talk to me at the top. What are we doing with Alvin Kamara, who seems to be the 2020 Christian McCaffrey?
Yeah, I'm team jam him in this week. Kamara and Dalvin Cook are the 2 guys at the very top that I'm not going to make a team without those 2 guys. We have seen Cleveland has been touching on Zeke. We have seen Cleveland. They limited Baltimore, one of the best rushing attacks in the NFL. They limited Baltimore in week 1. They held Mixon down in week 2. And I don't remember who Cleveland played last week, but it was not – there wasn't a good rushing performance on the ground against them either. Cleveland ranks 9th in adjusted line yards, 7th in second level yards allowed, and 3rd in open field yards. It's just they're a pass funnel. And so I think if Dallas has success in this game, Zeke might go out and run for 70 or 80 yards, which he normally does against better run defenses anyways. But it's not going to be enough for me. He's going to have to score 3 touchdowns at that yardage total to burn me. And I'm willing to bet against the touchdown variance in that regard. So the reasons I love Dalvin Cook is for all the same reasons I don't love Zeke. So you look at Minnesota on the offensive side of the ball. They rank 2nd in adjusted line yards, 1st in second level yards, and 5th in the open field yards. Then you go to the defensive side of the ball, and you go all the way down to where they're playing Houston. And Houston ranks 28th in adjusted line yards, 28th in second level yards, and 30th in open field yards. So you have a top of the top rushing attack on offense and a bottom of the bottom rushing defense. It is, and Dalvin Cook, like you said, everybody's playing Kamara and Zeke. Dalvin Cook is going to go overlooked once again. And I will sit here and tell you, for all the same reasons I played Dalvin last week and the same reasons I played Aaron Jones 2 weeks ago, play Dalvin Cook this week. He might rush for more yards than he ran for last week, and he ran for 180. So right. It's just, and even if for whatever reason Minnesota gets down, Dalvin is still involved in the pass game. So it's such a good spot, and he's going to be lower owned than he should be because everybody's playing Zeke $200 more, which is, I understand it. Zeke is so good, like his floor is so high, but man, Dalvin can absolutely smash this week, and I will not have a team without Dalvin or Kamara.
Right, and I think the other thing that makes people feel comfortable about playing Zeke too is that you're not going through pass catcher roulette with the Dallas team, with all 3 of these receivers being relevant, and then even Cedric Wilson getting into the mix there in Dallas, which he kind of got there. There were some injuries I think that Lamb was dealing with and Cooper dealt with in that game. So he was able to see the field, but it just is that comfort level, right, Matty, of just how can Zeke disappoint me in this home matchup against Cleveland? It's not possible. Just $200 more. That's why I was talking about that pricing being tight. So and Kamara is, after that game, his ownership is just going to be there. So yeah, he's the optimal play at 8K. He should be almost 10K, like we've seen McCaffrey and David Johnson and Le'Veon Bell the last couple of years. Even I hate to say if Michael Thomas plays, he might be limited because I want to play him if he plays, but it's just they don't have
like we've seen without Michael Thomas out there, they don't have options to stretch the ball down the field, one. And two, Drew Brees doesn't look like the Drew Brees that we're used to the last however many years. Like he looks like he wants to just check the ball down more. And good luck tackling Kamara on checkdowns. Like what's he?
Right.
Would he catch 10 passes or something stupid last week?
I
saw a stat on Twitter.
14, right?
14.
Or 13 catches on 14 targets.
I saw a stat on Twitter this week that said Kamara, if you take away all his rushing and just compared him to wide receivers in the passing game, he would be wide receiver number 4 in PPR scoring.
That's ridiculous.
And that's not even including rushing stats on top of that. Like,
right.
He's just such a good play against Detroit. You know what? And if Latavius Murray scores a touchdown, that's fine. I don't care. Kamara might score 3.
Yeah, I feel like Latavius Murray is kind of getting some love there, like just because of what Detroit is giving up to through the running back position, and Chase Edmonds was able to see the field there and kind of get some work without Kenyon Drake kind of needing to be out there to do enough. Speaking of Kenyon Drake, Matty, let's kind of talk about these mid-tier running backs. And if you're not, well, I shouldn't say that, but maybe you want to just play for one of these top guys and you're looking for other of these other guys to kind of save you some salary. So the guys that I had written down were Jonathan Taylor. He's 6,600. He's on the road against Chicago, and it kind of feels more like a FanDuel play than a DraftKings play because of the pass catching work not being there. And I think Naheem Hines is going to, be healthy for this week, if what I'm seeing is correct. But they've allowed a rushing touchdown in every game this week. They're 25th in yards per carry allowed and 25th in rushing points per game allowed. The Bears, that is. And so the script, I don't think last week kind of set the tone for them because they were able to just control that game so much with the 2 pick sixes against Sam Darnold that they had against the Jets. But if this game kind of stays close, I feel like he will see the touches, the 20 touches that we could see out of Taylor. And he's the guy on the ground. They want to get him going. So I do have some interest there, but maybe more so from a FanDuel perspective. Kenyon Drake is a guy, people are bringing him up in the chat too. So he comes in at 6,000. He's let me down so many times already this year, Matty, so it's hard for me to go back there. But you're looking at this matchup against Carolina that we've targeted running backs against them all year. And it has to pay off for him in this spot. Otherwise, how can we trust them? How can we trust them? And they've been Carolina D. They've been kind of decent against the pass. So you're feeling like Kenyon Drake can be in a get right spot here, and he's very popular again, even though he's let some people down early. Early indications show that he will be popular again. We kind of touched on Joe Mixon at 5,800, but a guy that we both had written down, Matty, that I want to touch on is Mike Davis. And Mike Davis has been seeing pass catching work against the Arizona Cardinals. This Arizona Cardinals linebacking core, I don't know what they're doing, but they're giving up a ton of points there to pass catching backs. And you're looking at his targets, 17 targets over the past 2 weeks without McCaffrey being out there. And on DraftKings at 5,700, if this game is somewhat, stays somewhat close there, we can, definitely see him kind of pay off that price tag. Mike Davis feels more like a flex play. Like if you're able to get Kamara and Zeke, Kamara and Cook, and then you're saying in the flex, oh, let me get Mike Davis, and maybe this guy can kind of get there. I wouldn't want to pivot off of one of those other 2 top options for him, but I kind of wanted to touch on him for this slate as well.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely like Mike Davis for all the reasons you said. He's a PPR monster because of his volume that he's getting like 17 targets, and it's been basically 6 quarters. What, he come in like the late third for McCaffrey 2 weeks ago? So, yeah, it's been 17 targets in about a game and a half. And if you go back and look at – I know Mike Davis has been in the league for a couple of years, but if you go back and look at his college stats, like he caught over 30 passes a few years at South Carolina. So this isn't just a random couple game sample where they're just targeting him just because. Like he has been a notable good pass catcher ever since college. He just has never had an opportunity in the NFL. So – we're finally seeing, I wonder. So the question for me on Mike Davis and his sustainability over the course of however many weeks he plays is the argument is, they weren't targeting CMC this much, so why would they target Mike Davis this much? And I guess my counter argument to that would be defenses quite simply don't give a shit about Mike Davis, but they do care. They care about CMC.
Sure, right.
So I feel like it's part of the game plan to maybe double team CMC occasionally, or limit him in some ways as best you can. But if Mike Davis is out there, let me focus my coverage on Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore as opposed to Mike Davis. So I wonder if defenses are keying on the Panthers a little differently. I guess after a couple weeks, we'll find out if Mike Davis continues to get 9 targets a game. But yeah, 5,700, you can definitely do worse for a pass catching running back.
Yeah, man. And you're just looking up I'm looking here as I had it written down, the work that they're seeing. We see Tampa Bay, they're very stout against the run, but they're giving up the 3rd most targets and receptions to running backs there. So he could, he might not give you, he might be more of a cash game play, right? He gives you a nice little floor there that you can feel comfortable with in your flex. And maybe he scores a touchdown, maybe not. But really, for a GPP perspective, you kind of need him to score. But he gives you a nice floor there at that. So I want to talk about him. And then, Matty, I want to talk about Austin Eckler too. So last week, we were kind of talking about the matchup there against Carolina, how favorable that was for them. And we're looking at an Austin Eckler here. We don't like to target running backs on the run against them. But again, another team that's giving up a ton of points to receiving backs as well. And we're looking at 11, since Herbert has been the starter here, and we hope that he remains the starter because he's just good for everybody in this offense. Keenan Allen loves him. Eckler's loving him. He goes 31 last week against Carolina in another good matchup for him. He's just seeing so much work, and he's 7,100. So it's a kind of awkward price tag to play for a running back on the road that is, kind of splitting time there with Kelly, if that's how you think. And maybe this game's closer and Kelly could be used, but Kelly was scripted out of last week's game. And Eckler is by far the leaps and bounds number 1 here. So at 7,100, I do have a little bit of interest in Eckler to get leverage plays on, especially on DraftKings, when I'm kind of looking around there and see, I don't really want to play Jacobs against Buffalo. Don't want to pay Nick Chubb at 7K. And, if I'm looking to play Taylor, who doesn't really catch passes, I should be looking at Eckler for just 500 more.
Yeah, guy saw 11 targets last week. It's hard to argue with that. But the only argument I have for Eckler is Tampa Bay has been a top run defense, just like New Orleans. Which, and like you said, you're not necessarily playing Eckler for the rushing upside. You're playing him for his pass catching ability, assuming they're trailing, and hoping he catches a receiving touchdown or 2. I don't hate it. I probably won't get there this week because I already love Dalvin and Kamara way more, and they're just a little bit more expensive. And then I also really like James Robinson for 600 less, going up against that Cincinnati defense that we talked about you can run on. Cincinnati ranks 23rd in adjusted line yards, 27th in second level yards, and 25th in open field yards. And meanwhile, the Jacksonville offensive line is actually blocked really well. So they rank 8th in the line yards, and then 16th and 11th in the second and open. So they have had success on the ground, and this is a really good rushing matchup. And even when they're not running the ball, we have seen James Robinson heavily utilized in the pass game as well. I think he had 6 targets for like 80 yards last week. So the guy is he is the sole reason they let Leonard Fournette go is because of how surprised they were with him in camp. And he has shown a ability to run and catch the football. This is a good defense to do it against. He's their goal line guy. He's going to score touchdowns. I just don't see, 6,500, you're getting a ton of volume in both the rushing and pass catching games. So Robinson is 6,500 feels weird to pay for him there, but his role is secure enough and the matchup's good enough that I think he's going to be a main play for me this week.
Yeah. Wow. Main play?
Yeah, I think I would rank him point per dollar. I would rank him as he's probably tied with David Johnson for probably my third or fourth favorite running back behind Cook and Kamara, and with factoring in salary.
No,
because all the reasons we say about James Robinson, you can apply those to David Johnson with his secure role and touchdown equity and pass game usage and good matchup. Right. And David Johnson's a great pivot off Deshaun Watson chalk. So, I really like both of those guys. And I'm going to have a really tight pool at running back this week.
That's fair. So no interest in Singletary if Moss is out again. I know his price was kind of cheap last week. That got people on him. If Moss is not able to go against this Raiders team, could he find himself in a good spot?
Yes, Las Vegas, you can run on them, but man, at the same time, all the same things we said about Seattle, you can say about Buffalo, and they're wanting to throw the ball more, especially on early downs. Singletary was popular last week. If Moss is out, he's probably likely going to be popular again. It just feels thin to play Singletary this week at 5,900 when you've got
right.
Mike Davis is cheaper than him. David Johnson's cheaper than him. Drake is right there, which I feel like Drake's a trap this week. If he can't do it against Detroit, who's he going to do it against?
I'm telling you, man, it's now or never. And we didn't even touch on. So Hopkins pops up on the injury report, right? Just all of a sudden, he's now on the injury report, and he's in jeopardy of possibly missing this game. If he doesn't see practice on Friday. So now without Hopkins out there, you're looking at Keyshawn Johnson, Andy Isabella, maybe Kirk's back, but he's still limited, and Larry Fitzgerald being their receiving option. So Drake might be just forced into work based off of you're losing the number one target share guy in the NFL.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a valid point. I would probably, yeah, I mean, they're playing Carolina. It's such a bad defense that they don't even need Hopkins to be able to move the ball. I guess they would have to be forced to throw more targets to Drake, right?
Yeah, or even Derek's here on Periscope talking about how Edmonds is out targeting Drake as well too. So maybe we see more.
Yeah. So I wrote up Edmonds as a waiver wire pickup and stash this week because I think that there's a chance Edmonds could just straight up win the job over Drake. I mean, even last year we saw, once DJ, he started looking dusty because I guess he was playing through an injury. And then Drake came in and took over, and DJ never saw the job again. And so it sounds like Kingsbury wants to have a one-man system basically for the most part. And Edmonds, the whole Drake in a boot thing in camp, boots are not precautionary. No matter what the Cardinals are telling you, you don't put a boot for precautionary reasons. That was reactive to something that was going on in his foot. And I guarantee you, he has not looked as explosive this year because he's playing through an injury. And if we get to the end of the year, it's going to be just like OBJ was last year, where I should have gotten surgery or something, but I chose not to and played through it. Like, it's going to be something like that because Drake should not just do nothing against that Detroit Lions run defense that we saw last week.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, if he can't do it, and that's kind of how I felt like with the Eagles team last week when they, get a tie against that game, the Bengals is ridiculous. But this is the spot he needs to blow up in. That's what you drafted him for in your redraft leagues. That's what you have him on your teams for. And so, if it's not this week, or God forbid, Edmonds goes out there and looks better than him, like you're saying, that it could be tough. I just wanted to make a correction there. So I was reading off some stats for Eckler there with Mike Davis. I got those mixed up, but him going against Arizona, they're not allowing that many targets and receptions to run pass catching running backs, but they are allowing the fifth most yards there and 2 touchdowns to pass catching running backs, which still makes them pretty solid there. Before we move on to wide receiver, Matty, I just wanted to touch on a situation here as I'm talking about playing Jared Goff for the Rams. How are we feeling about Darrell Henderson? And I haven't seen any injury reports from the Rams. So before we get into this, I don't know what Akers' status is. You might know, but it's against the Giants. You're looking last week against Buffalo, 20 attempts, and he should definitely be able to see that if he's the guy in the backfield this week and 100 yards against Buffalo. It definitely makes me, interested in playing him. He's kind of one of those guys too, where I feel like him and Jonathan Taylor, I would much rather play them on FanDuel, where the touchdown equity carries so much weight if they score, them not catching as many passes, but he could just get there on a sure play if they get up big against the Giants and need to just run him.
So what if I told you Buffalo is a really bad run defense?
I'd say tell me more.
They rank 24th in adjusted line yards on defense and 26th in second level yards, which we didn't talk about Josh Jacobs, but I think he's a very, very good large field tournament play this week at like 0 ownership. Buffalo has sneaky been a good pass defense and a run funnel. So it doesn't surprise me that Henderson went out and had a good game last week. And then flip the script to this week, you've got the New York Giants, who we would assume are bad, but they actually rank 7th in adjusted line yards and 9th in second level yards. So you've got a Giants team who's a pass funnel and a Buffalo team last week who was a run funnel. And I think the Giants are going to look more to attack with Goff than they do Henderson. Granted, if Akers if Akers is out again, Henderson's volume is going to be good enough. But at the same time, if Malcolm Brown is the one that gets hot, I could see McVay just saying, Malcolm Brown, go out there and get the most carries, like they did in week 1. It's right. McVay's going to go with a hot hand approach. Obviously, Henderson's the more talented, but
if these guys are, and they told us before the season it's going to be a committee back, and Akers in week 1 looks nice. Malcolm Brown comes in, looks nice. Henderson comes in, looks nice. They're just going to go roulette, I feel like, this whole year, and we may just be point chasing there. And you're looking at Henderson's price tag at 5,800. You got Drake, Singletary, Mike Davis, David Johnson all around him. It's crazy. And then one more guy, Matty, before we move on to wide receivers that I want to touch on is Ronald Jones. It looks like Fournette will be out. He's 4,700 going against the Chargers. It doesn't make you feel great about it, but he could be the only guy there. And he was seeing some pass catching work with Tom Brady before Fournette was kind of getting into the fold there. So without any Fournette, it should just be his backfield at 4,700, even in this matchup. Do you have interest?
Oh, I mean, you have to, right? Because of volume. It doesn't feel good, but 4,700, I guess you could do worse. But I will say the way builds are taking me this week, there are a handful of 45 to 5K wide receivers that I feel really confident in that I would probably rather play because I feel like they can have a ceiling game as opposed to Ronald Jones.
Yes. And let's go into wide receiver, Matty, because this is where we can have a lot of fun this week. And so we have Hopkins at the top at 8,500. He's the only 8K wide receiver. If he plays in this matchup, I definitely have a ton of interest in him. Just when you're looking at, what he's offering you, right? He's caught 80% of his targets this year. The floor is so solid with him. Evans and Allen both had great weeks. Mike Evans and Keenan Allen both had great weeks against this Carolina secondary. So if he's out there, I definitely have interest in him. But you've been talking about Mike Thomas, and he's 7,600. That feels like so cheap for a Mike Thomas that actually has a shot at playing going against this Detroit team there that doesn't have Darius Slay anymore. And he can definitely, we know, blow that price tag up. We have the Seattle wide receivers coming in. Lockett gets the boost here only by 200, but he's the higher price one on DraftKings. But you're looking at DK Metcalf, Matty, and I have more interest playing him this week. I feel like he's going to be on the outside there. We don't know what's going on with Byron Jones, I don't think, but if he's out,
he was limited.
He was limited. Okay. Yeah. So he could be back. So that could maybe change things for me. But if he has a chance to miss, you're looking at 90 receiving yards in every game that he's been out there. Gets you exposure to that Miami game. I feel like not having a Seattle receiver, because we saw Lockett just did it last week with 3 touchdowns. Metcalf should have had 2. He feels like a solid play. But yeah, I want to, maybe let's start at the top and then we'll kind of go from there. But you like Michael Thomas this week, Matty. What's sticking out to you? Is it just the price tag? It's because it's Michael Thomas. He's coming back. Do you have any worry about him coming back from injury here in this game, with it being a soft tissue, hamstring, or is it just wheels up if Michael Thomas is out there?
It's just really hard for me to not play him at 7,600 if he plays. Because I mean, what are they? I guess they are 1 and 2, right? So they are kind of, fighting for their life.
Right.
But at the same time, I mean, he's like one of their franchise players. I don't know. I don't know.
I think they need to get right, though. They need to get right off of these losses.
They have literally nobody else in the pass game. Like Emmanuel Sanders has been non-existent. Jared Cook's been okay, but he's hurt. He might not even play. It's literally just been Alvin Kamara, and they need a boost in the pass game. And if he plays against Detroit at $7,600, I just, especially on my Detroit team, like if I'm stacking Stafford, Galladay, and Marvin Jones, I will play Michael Thomas on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you need the Saints to go nuclear in that situation. And if he's playing, there's a good chance that he's involved.
Right. Oh, 100%. And you're looking at this price tag, and this, 76, we were building around the Seattle pass catchers last week. They were in the 6,000s, but we were still being able to pay up for some guys who are in the $7,000 range. And, you take some value there at running back, or you punt defense, and you get a cheap tight end, and you can definitely get him into your lines. We talked about Fitzpatrick, right? He's 5,400. So if you're playing Fitzpatrick to get exposure to that game, then you can definitely fit in Michael Thomas, and you play him and Kamara, like you said, and you're getting pretty much all the New Orleans work there. So it's so hard to pass up on playing Michael Thomas, because this could be the last time you get him at under 8K.
I mean, he was 9K in week 1.
Right, 9K in week 1, unbelievable. Plus, he has the Q tag, so even if he practices tomorrow, he's playing, right? But even if it's somewhat limited or whatever, and he still ends up suiting up on Sunday, his ownership will not be anywhere where it should be.
Yeah, and I'm not looking at that first game log either. Tampa Bay's got a good defense this year, like all around, even against the pass. So I'm not going to let that dictate me not playing Michael Thomas against Detroit. If he's out there, you got to at least have some exposure to him at 7,600, just because if he is like even 90%, he can run circles around those corners. So yeah, it's tough to get off him, man.
So you got Michael Thomas here at 76. I think that Tyreek Hill, I have some interest in playing him. New England matchup that we should expect points in this game. It seems like in these matchups in the past, Matty, that the real focus has kind of been don't let Kelsey get going. Don't let Kelsey get going. And we just saw that again with the Raiders. And I'm not saying they have anywhere near the receiving corps that Kansas City does, but he was like, take Darren Waller out. And that's kind of what Belichick preaches. And so at 6,900 with Hill, I was kind of looking into his past matchups against New England, and we know that they have guys on their defense who are sitting out this year, and he's put up 7, 133 and 1 against them, 7, 142 and 3 against them, 6 for 62, 1 for 42, and that 1 for 42. He's an explosive guy. We've seen it, so he can definitely take one to the house, and if he scores, then you're just getting work, everywhere else across the field with him. And yes, I know they have Hardman out there, they have Kelsey, they have Watkins, they have CEH, all these other guys who can throw, but the big play ability really, starts and ends with Hill. I think Hardman, he's shown that he has that against Baltimore as well too, but you definitely like the numbers there in that matchup. So I was talking about playing Pat Mahomes, and I do like getting a Pat Mahomes, Tyreek Hill team if I was building 3 teams to get exposed to that game. Let's talk about the mid tier, because I know you have a lot to talk about here in the cheap tier, and one guy we both like. But the mid tier, I just wanted to kind of touch on these guys. Amari Cooper, I talked about there being so many guys to choose from, but really he is the one for Dak, right? You're looking at targets of 12, 9, and 14 to start the season. He hasn't scored in any game yet, but he's still putting up 17, 19, 18 consistently. If this guy finds the end zone, you're looking at close to a 25, 30-point game out of him. With the target share that he's seeing in Dallas. That is just, still carrying its weight there. So I like getting some exposure to Cooper. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on Mike Evans. I don't really have any, but we know that Godwin now is going to be out for this game. So, and Arians has talked at lengths about getting Mike Evans double-digit targets in every game that they play in. And so, okay, let's see it again. Can you get that in a not positive script for him? But he will be the guy out there, and Scott Miller's banged up, and they have Justin Watson, and we don't know what the tight ends are doing. So there's that. The Rams wide receivers, I think I'd probably plant my flag on Robert Woods. He seemed to be the more consistent one, and people will look at what Kupp just did against Buffalo, but the slot is where you can attack Buffalo, and I think that's what kind of got Kupp going here. And I think Woods has the better matchup this week. And then one guy I want to touch on, and I'll give it to you, Matty, is DJ Moore. And so DJ Moore is 5,600. This was people's wide receiver ones coming into the year. They loved DJ Moore. You couldn't leave drafts without him. And he's now tied to Teddy Bridgewater, who just, I don't know, they're not on the same page, can't get him the ball. But another guy we're looking at here who hasn't scored a touchdown this year. You liked what you saw against Tampa Bay, seeing 13 targets there for 120. But outside of that, you're looking at 8 and 9. So the floor is definitely scary. But I have it written down here, Matty, and I just wanted to walk through this with you. So the Arizona unit as a whole this year, they've only allowed 27 catches, 365 yards, and 2 touchdowns to wide receivers. But wide receiver ones, or if you look at, they played San Francisco in week 1, I think Bourne had like 3 for 50 or something like that. But Kittle went for 4 for 44. Then you look at Terry McLaurin with Haskins, who's ass, 7 for 125 and 1. Then you look at Galladay last week, 6 for 57 and 1. So wide receiver ones are really getting work against this unit here. And Patrick Peterson, doesn't worry me. From a GPP perspective, I like getting some exposure to DJ Moore here in a game that should be paced up. And if Arizona is able to get some points on him, Teddy B will have to throw. And at 5,600, I feel like that's cheap enough to get exposure to a guy that has the talent and can do it on any given week.
Absolutely. I have no counter arguments to playing DJ Moore this week in this spot, especially at his price. I guess the only probably concern is he's probably going to be very popular. I think if you play cash games, you play DJ Moore.
Right.
In tournaments, you can maybe look elsewhere because there are some good options in that range, like OBJ if he plays. There are pivots for tournaments, but I think DJ Moore at 5,600 makes a ton of sense.
So talk to me about some of those pivots, Matty, because I know you have some guys that are even around his price tag or cheaper than DJ Moore comes in this week.
Yeah, so I mean, we talked about Kenny Galladay at 6K. He's a little bit more expensive, but he's the wide receiver 1 going up against New Orleans possibly without Lattimore. Then on the very same team, you've got Marvin Jones at 4,900, which I can't tell you the last time Marvin Jones fell below 5K. But it just feels like a spot where, they're getting Galladay back. It's not going to be a game where they can just run the football and control the game. They're going to have to throw. Galladay takes away most of the attention and gets the top corners, and the defense pays him, the most attention. And so Marvin Jones really excels when Galladay is out on the field because of that effect that Galladay has on the defense. So I really like Marvin Jones at 4,900. You've got Golden Tate going up against Troy Hill for the Rams. So Troy Hill, he was good last year, but he was playing outside corner. With Roby Coleman moving to Philly, Troy Hill has become the slot corner for the Rams, and he has not been nearly as good. So last year, he gave up a 45% completion rate and a 61 passer rating. And that was across 14 games. This year, he's allowed 19 catches on 20 targets for 95% completion rate.
Check the box.
A 91 passer rating, and he's given up 11 yards per completion. So Golden Tate gets a great, they're without Sterling Shepard. They have no running backs. They're likely going to be playing from behind. Slots have killed Troy Hill all year. It's just 4,600 is too cheap for a guy who can go out and catch you 8 passes for 80 or 90 yards and a touchdown and get you mid-20s. So I do really like Golden Tate this week for cheap. You mentioned the slots against the Bills, absolutely shredding them.
Yep.
It's Hunter Renfrow. Like, how do you make a team without Hunter Renfrow this week, considering what he did down the stretch last year, considering the matchup he's in,
right,
and considering Henry Ruggs and Edwards are out this week.
Right. And people want to play Zay Jones for the revenge narrative.
No. Give me the slot. Give me the slot receiver that has absolutely torched Buffalo through 3 weeks.
Right. Absolutely.
And he's 100%. What, 4,500?
4,600 on DraftKings. You gotta love it.
And then even right there, 4,500 below them, you've got T. Higgins in that pass funnel game against Jacksonville. I would assume Jacksonville put CJ Henderson on AJ Green, considering he's by far their best corner. If they don't, then that means CJ Henderson's on T. Higgins, and that would, not be ideal. But I mean, he can still catch passes, and he's only 4,500 in a pass funnel game. So I do like T. Higgins as well, and they had John Ross inactive last week for the first time. So it's like they made a conscious effort to get him the ball. And what do you see? 9 targets, 10 targets?
Yep. That's what I'm looking at right now.
9
targets.
Yeah, 9 targets. So, and he caught 2 touchdowns. So Burrow was looking his way in the end zone.
Yeah, man, he came out and ready to play. Kid gets the opportunity, he takes advantage of it.
Yeah. So talking about rookies, what are you doing with Justin Jefferson?
Holding my nose and praying that he doesn't go. I mean, that's a career game for him. Like,
right.
Is he getting 175 yards again this season? Probably not. So, you missed out on him last week against Tennessee. You shake the other people's hand that played him. And it made sense in that game script because it was Minnesota and Tennessee was jumping off of the page with the high total there. And I guess Houston in this game against Houston is too, to a certain extent. But now he's on the radar. Now he's 5,200. And last week you were getting him at 4,200, $1,000 price increase. And we know what his floor is, so if it's Adam Thielen this week, three targets in those first 2 games. I'm not going to be chasing a guy who's priced right around the likes of CeeDee Lamb, Robbie Anderson, Marvin Jones, like you touched on. I won't do it. Edelman at 5,700 against the Chiefs, where I know he actually has a sustainable floor there. I'd much rather play him. So I can't go back there. What if Jefferson is about to get the Stephon Diggs role and get 8 to 10 targets a game, and he's facing Vernon Hargraves as his cornerback matchup, and we know how Tampa
bad
Bay Vernon Hargraves.
Yes, we know how bad Hargraves is because Bradley Roby. So PFF has Bradley Roby slated to shadow Thielen. They've got him as he's going to follow him around. So if that's the case, Thielen's only been playing 17% of his snaps in the slot, whereas Jefferson and Chad Beebe have been playing 60 and 82% in the slot. So you're getting Vernon Hargraves, some combo of Hargraves and Eric Murray.
Jesus.
Yeah, that's why I asked, because I feel like he's going to be popular, and the game is such a high total, but he's in such a good matchup.
Right. So here's my fear with that, Matty, is that Justin Jefferson, I feel like, and I'd have to go back and see because I didn't watch that game back in its entirety. But when he's going out there and he has 175, he's definitely putting up production. But he had a 71-yard bomb. So outside of that bomb, okay, yeah, he got you 100 yards because of the volume there, but you're talking about playing Dalvin Cook, how favorable of a matchup it is for Dalvin Cook. So my fear here is that Houston has showed us in no way, shape, or form that they're going to take a 1 to 2 or more touchdown lead against their opponents. So, if this game's close, I feel like they could just still be feeding Dalvin, or if they get up with Dalvin in this game and Houston's forced to throw, they could just be running out with him. So I just don't know if we're going to see the necessary volume there if Houston can't capitalize on opportunities on the other side, which Vegas is telling us they might be able to, but I need to see it, I think.
Yeah, man. Jefferson's getting 26% of the air yards and 20% of the target share.
So you're playing him, and I know, Matty, you only play three teams. So
yeah,
and I'm one who's willing to open it up to 20 max, and I'm really not finding. It's Thursday right now, so that could change if I get some Deshaun teams going. But as of right now, I don't see myself having any when I'm looking at Devontae Parker, DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, CeeDee Lamb, these guys around him. So who are you willing to? You're willing to play him over these other guys here?
Oh, that's what I'm still trying to figure out.
Marvin Jones.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely, if OBJ plays, I wouldn't play him over OBJ at 5,800. I wouldn't play him over Devontae Parker at 5,700. DJ Moore, I probably wouldn't play him over him at 5,600. CeeDee Lamb, Lamb has the best matchup against Cleveland. You tack Cleveland in the slot because they've got Denzel Ward they can run out on the outside, which I think he might have popped up questionable today. I can't remember.
Okay. And I know he's been battling some injuries.
Okay. So it might have been consistent. Yeah. Might have been a injury he's been fighting through. Justin Jefferson, 52. Marvin Jones, 49. Yeah, then you get to that next tier of the 45 to 4,900. Man, I don't.
Yeah. So and also, like, are you going into builds, Matty, and you're saying outside of the Fitzpatrick teams, I don't think you're playing a Dolphins unless you have Fitzpatrick, but the Seattle wide receivers what are you doing with them?
DK's easy. If Byron Jones plays, I'm not playing DK.
Okay.
Because I know he torched Stephon Gilmore. But at the same time, Byron's strength is to match up with size guys. So Dallas used him a lot when he first came in the league. They actually had him at safety guarding tight ends because that is his strength, is to play up in size and be really physical, and especially on the deep balls. So I am really concerned. Like, that's Byron Jones' strength, is defending the big physical receiver down the field, which is what DK does. And without Anthony Brown and having to start Jordan Lewis in the slot, it just feels like another Tyler Lockett game. It is tough to pay $7K for Tyler Lockett.
I know, man. I know. When you're looking at, he did have. I want to make sure I get it right there. So,
how many times is Lockett going to catch 2 1-yard touchdowns in the same game?
Unbelievable. Well, when DK's out there showboating before he gets the end zone and fumbles, and he did catch his touchdown late. I get that. But Russ was just, okay, Lockett's there. I'm finding him. Let's go. He scored 40. It was ridiculous. The production, we're seeing that same production. It's just the touchdowns. He got 3. He only had 1 in the previous 2 games. So, yeah, if he's going to go out there and get 3 scores, hell, yeah, that's worth it. But you have to be sure that you're getting that.
Because what's he got to get at $7K to burn me? 30-something? 35?
Yeah.
Because if he gets mid-20s, I'm matching him with the running backs I'm playing, right?
Yeah, the 3 touchdown thing, that's an anomaly. So you're saying he gets 2. You take off one there. So that's about right under 35 with the 100-yard. He just got the 100-yard DK bonus for 3 points too. So actually you're looking at, if he doesn't get 100 yards and he didn't have that third touchdown, that's 30 points.
Yeah, and even if you go back to last year, Lockett has never he shows a great floor, but he doesn't have like this massive ceiling.
Right.
And so this is week 3 against Dallas was the first time we've really seen a Lockett ceiling. Because look at week 1 and week 2 where Seattle scored 38 and 35 points. Lockett had 17 and 19 DraftKings points. Right. If he gets 17 or 19 and I pay $7K for him, I'm toast.
Right. Exactly. And you're not playing him, I don't feel like, unless you're playing Russ too. So it really doesn't, like DK, I feel like is the guy you can play without Russ because he is just so explosive. But like as much as Lockett is doing with, the catches and everything, like all of his volume directly tied and correlated to Russell Wilson. That's why you want to play Lockett with Wilson. But DK could go out there, it's bomb. 50-yarder touchdown. Okay, we're already talking about 12 points. Now you get another couple more catches. Now you're around 20. And it's only the $200 saving, but the upside I feel like can be more boom because of those big plays than with Lockett.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that.
Okay. And then just before we move on to tight end, let's just touch on some of these guys down here. So I saw somebody bring up Nelson Aguilar before. I don't want him. I'm playing Renfro, and just that's my Raiders exposure. But Aguilar is in the 3K range. I think 3,400 is where I saw him. So I want to touch on that. And then another 3,400 is Justin Watson. Like I said, with Chris Godwin being out, Mike Evans will be there. He'll get a majority of the work, but Scott Miller is also on the injury report. So if he doesn't go, Justin Watson should be in for, more volume already there. Do you have any interest in those guys? And I guess I'll throw in David Moore, as we just got a question there about 3,400 for him as well.
Yeah. So David Moore, which is weird because David's usually known as a field stretcher, right? Which what I'm looking at is only got him as an ADOT of 4 yards per target.
Yeah, I mean he got that 38-yarder against New England, but then his other longs on the season have been 18 and 2.
Yeah. So man, if they're not using him in that downfield stretching role, then I don't want David Moore because that's where he gets minimal targets as it is. So you need that 3 catches for 70 yards and a touchdown kind of game for him to pay off.
Right.
That's 16 points at 3,400. And at that point, I'd almost rather just pay 1K more and punt it like tight end and defense because there are some cheap tight ends you can play this week, which we can talk about.
Yeah, man. Let's get into tight end because we're right on there. We're keeping it moving along here as we're right around the 115 mark. And, we got our tight ends and really we saw in week 1 that we were getting a lot, we had high price with Kelsey and Kittle and Andrews on the slate, and then mid-tier guys, and then kind of cheap guys. And now this situation is kind of, reaching the tier is strong, Matty, is what I'm trying to say. The tier is strong. You got Kelsey at the top at 6,800, Andrews at 6K, which I like going against Washington. Very favorable spot for him. And we know how much Lamar loves him. Hopefully he can catch the ball this week as he wasn't against Kansas City. Tyler Higbee comes in at 5,700. Cook is questionable, so I'll let you talk about that for who his replacement could be because he's 5,400 in a good matchup there. Darren Waller at 5,200, looking to bounce back against going against the Patriots last week. Now gets the Bills, and then Gesicki at 5,100, and then you're already into the 4K range. And there are some good guys down here. Talk about Dalton Schultz. Cleveland's been a team that we've targeted tight ends against for some time now. And Dalton Schultz, even with so many receivers who are seeing the field, last week, 6 targets, and Cedric Wilson got run and was able to put up some points that broke into that. 10 targets against the Atlanta Falcons, 22 DK points. And then week 1, we still had Blake Jarwin still out there before he got hurt. So, but Dalton Schultz in that matchup, I definitely like getting some exposure to him. And And yeah, man, I think I'm going to play, if I can make the salary work with some of these cheap guys. I like getting exposure to Mark Andrews anytime that he's on the slate. It allows me to get exposure to Lamar Jackson. Mark Andrews is leaps and bounds his favorite target. Marquise Brown, he maybe could get there sometimes, but you're really looking for those explosive plays from him. And Andrews he's reaping in everything, man. I mean, 8 targets last week, only 3 against Houston. That's kind of an anomaly. You won't see that. But then 6 targets against Cleveland in week 1 with those 2 touchdowns. If he scores a touchdown, basically, you'll get there. But 6K, you really need him to score. I know it for him to pay off. But I do like always getting some exposure to him. And then TJ Hawkinson was the other guy I wanted to talk about. I was on him last week, and I think I was just a week too early here. You're going against this New Orleans team. We might be saying, have yourself a day, TJ. You got 7 targets last week against Arizona, another team we like to target against. And it was just so frustrating, Matty, because I'm watching Jesse James get a touchdown, then get another end zone target. And finally we get Hawkinson with the end zone target late, but it doesn't convert. But TJ, he should really be able to eat in this matchup. I don't see how he doesn't. You're loving the price tag in the 4K range for him. And I'm not really, I like Kenny Golladay and I like Marvin Jones too, but this guy's cheaper than both of them in a tight end position that I really just don't like to think about. So I like getting exposure to that game through him. What are you thinking for tight end?
Yeah, I think you nailed it right on the head with most of these guys. I do like that Hawkinson call. We've seen New Orleans get shredded by tight ends over and over again through 3 weeks. And as I mentioned, I like Stafford. But the couple of punt plays I just wanted to touch on. Adam Troutman, if Jared Cook is out,
yes.
He's only got a handful of targets this year because Cook has been playing, but he seems to be – Josh Hill is not going to be their pass-catching tight end. Troutman will be. If you actually pull him up on playerprofiler.com, the athletic comparable to Troutman is Dallas Goedert, if that gives you any idea into his size and athletic profile. So, Troutman's the next pass catcher at tight end there. We know you can target Detroit with tight ends. So 2,500 is a min price. If Cook is out, it will be very hard for me to get off Troutman, especially, if Michael Thomas doesn't play. But even if he does, Drew Brees has made it a main staple to target tight ends in that offense. So I really do like him at min price this week. And the other 2 guys, Jordan Akins, if you are playing Deshaun Watson, I think he's a great pivot off of we didn't talk about it, but Brandon Cooks is like one of the most popular wide receivers this week, and I will not play a popular Brandon Cooks.
That's so unfortunate. He's 4,600. I saw that.
So he's popular, so I love Jordan Akins as a pivot off of Brandon Cooks for $3,300 going against Minnesota, who has given up 200 receiving yards to the tight end position in 3 games. And then the other guy is if DeAndre Hopkins is out, our boy, Dan the Man, at some point, he's going to score a touchdown. It's coming. But
okay,
that's only if Hopkins is out is I will have interest in Dan the Man. So it's going to be if Cook and Hopkins play, Akins will be my cheap guy. If Cook is out, Troutman will be my cheap guy. And if Hopkins is out, I will mix in some Arnold.
2,700 Dan Arnold.
I mean, because like you said with Kenyon Drake, right? They just won't have anybody to pass to, especially in the red zone, because Hopkins steals all those targets down and close. So,
yeah, in 2,700, I mean, dude finds the end zone, you're chilling.
You're good. Yeah,
you're chilling. So yeah, I hear you there.
And this has been a year too, where outside of maybe 1 or 2 tight end games, there haven't really been any guys flirting with 100-yard games. It's been you hunt touchdowns at the tight end position.
Yeah.
And I mean, some of these cheap guys, they can catch 2 touchdowns.
And speaking of hunting for touchdowns here, Dawson Knox, he could be back for Buffalo, and Croft is getting touchdowns, and the other guy for Buffalo is getting touchdowns last week. I think they had 2 or 3 touchdowns to the tight end position. So they're going against the Raiders team, Matty, and I don't have their stats in front of me of how they've defended the position. I think definitely pretty well. Yeah, I'm looking here. Only 7 catches allowed, 66 yards. They do have a touchdown allowed here, but Josh Allen's willing to throw, and they get in the red zone, and I think anybody's viable. He's 3,500, I think, on DraftKings. So he's coming back from a concussion. It's not really a significant injury that we have to worry about. We've seen guys come back from concussions and be fine. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Maybe for Kev's sake. I know he always loves talking about these Buffalo tight ends. So yeah, man, I think
I do like the Schultz call. I'll just say, I mean, Cleveland is so bad against the tight end position. I love the Schultz call if you have the salary to make it work.
Yeah, exactly. If you have the salary, I mean, he's right there, kind of around Evan Ingram going against the Rams, Hunter Henry, Greg Olsen. I don't know how people are playing Austin Hooper, but I saw him getting some ownership too. So I think he's a nice pivot at 43. It kind of just is not a range you're looking at for this week. He could go under the radar.
Yeah.
Let's talk about defense this week, Matty, as we get ready to wrap up and go into our build for this week. But defense, man, it's ugly. And we've gotten away with paying down for defense all season long. And yeah, last week, I think, was the first time I played over 3K for a defense. It was the Patriots. I felt pretty good about their spot at home going against the Raiders and Carr, and it kind of looked like it might not pay off, but man, they weren't able to capitalize on red zone opportunities. So I definitely took that to the bank if them not allowing that many points. But this week, man, I really think that it's tough here, right? So you got Ravens at the top at 4K going against Washington, Rams at the top going to 3,900 going against the Giants, Bills against the Raiders. And then after that, it's like, I don't want to look at anybody, but I will say, so if it was a cheap D, and it makes me nervous because you're talking about Dalvin Cook on the other side and things like that, but they do have Kirk Cousins still. And if Houston can find themselves in a positive game script to where they get up and they're forcing Cousins to throw, 2,500 for the Houston Texans defense that has to do something to be able to get right. I feel like they're the only ones that I feel confident about, Matty, that are in the 2K range, to be honest with you this week. Maybe the Chargers too, but outside of them, I was looking at the Bears and the Cowboys. So the Cowboys are going against Cleveland. If they can hold that run and they can force Baker Mayfield to have to throw, him making mistakes, I can buy into that at 3,300. This front seven is pretty good, man. They got Aldon Smith back there. Shout out to Aldon Smith, Mizzou guy, who's been back, seems to revitalize his career, and he's getting to the quarterback at will. So you like the pressure that they're getting there. And then the Bears defense too. I like Jonathan Taylor this week because of what they're giving up on the ground, but they've limited wide receivers a ton this year, Matty. They have not, I don't think they've allowed a wide receiver passing touchdown in quite some time. And so you're looking at this going against a Phillip Rivers team on the road. The Bears are at home now. They got Nick Foles. They're feeling revitalized. They're 3,100, and they're an opportunistic defense. We saw it last week against Matt Ryan. So I'm fine with playing them at 3,100 as well, too.
Yeah, defense is so gross this week. I mean, there's eight? We talked about 8 games, so there were a 50-point total.
Right.
So it's like no matter what you do, it's just death by 1,000 cuts. So I think you nailed it, though. I mean, most of these, you're just hoping to get some pressure on the quarterback, and hopefully something bad happens.
Yeah, man. I didn't know if anything was sticking out to you in regards to like defensive lines that we could look at to take advantage of some of these guys.
The couple of situations that kind of stand out. So we know that the Chargers have a really good secondary and a solid pass rush, and you've got Tampa Bay with no Chris Godwin. They're going to be running out what's his face, Justin Watson, no Scotty Miller. So Tampa Bay is more of a shell of its normal offense than it normally would be, and Brady is not the Brady. He's getting up there in age, and we saw in Week 1 he made mistakes against New Orleans and threw a pick six. So the Chargers would be probably my preferred cheap defense at 2,900 if I was allowed to just pick a team without any implications on the rest of my salary for the rest of my squad.
Right.
But I've come across a couple of the builds I've had this week. It's left me with like $2,300 for defense, and the Browns are just scared. The Browns against Dallas are just staring.
Oh, geez. Oh, here we go, Matty. Hey, Myles Garrett and the boys get pressure.
Yeah, they've got 8 sacks in 3 games.
Yeah, that is a nice stat. That is a nice stat.
And if I haven't seen, is Tyron Smith playing this week? Do you know?
I have not seen, but I know him and Collins, I believe, were on the injury report at least going into Wednesday. I saw that. Yeah.
So if that's the case, I could, if you've got $2,300 left. So just first rule of NFL DFS, I never blow up my build for a defense. Because how many times do you play a defense in a good matchup and you're like, oh, this defense is in such a good matchup, and they get like 4 points? Right. And it's because, other than sacks, everything else, fumbles, interceptions, and touchdowns are mostly random.
Yep.
And so outside of sacks, which sacks are really the only thing we can predict, you can't really predict any other fantasy points for them. So give me a defense that's cheap, that allows me to play the other guys on my team that I want to play, that gets pressure on the quarterback. And for me, if I've got $2,300 left out of those 4 options, it would be the Browns.
Yeah, man. We always talk about punting defense. So that's a fun one.
I played the
there.
Jets last week.
Yeah, I played them too. 2K. Hell with it.
Yes.
I see they just got an interception touchdown here. I could have used that last week against Philadelphia. But
it's always a week late.
Always a week late. Will in the chat here, who's been with us the whole time, Matty, he's talking about how can pay up for Ravens coming off that embarrassing loss on Monday night. They should smash, and I don't disagree. Will, but you're paying $4K to get a defense like that, and they have proven it this year. You're looking at their for your game log watching. 15 points against Cleveland, 15 points against Houston, gave up 34 points against KC and still got 7 fantasy points. So you're definitely feeling like you're getting a safe enough floor. It's just, what are you sacrificing in your builds to get them? And if you're not sacrificing enough, if you're playing a Ryan Fitzpatrick stack and you're only running it back with one guy in Seattle and you feel like you have enough salary to get the Ravens D in there, then by all means do so. But we always look to pay up for our guys who are at the skill positions and then plug in that defense there, just knowing that a weird, touchdown from the defense or the special teams can really make a difference on the slate or make a difference for your defense that you're playing on the slate.
Yeah. You think about it. So you're paying $4K for the Ravens. If you just say, okay, I want to pay $1,900 less and just play Miami just to be able to fit what I want to fit. That's the difference between playing Mike Davis and playing Dalvin Cook at the running back position.
Yeah.
Those are the things that, just punting at. So while, Miami might get you 1 point, if the Ravens only get you 8, that's a 7-point difference. And I guarantee you Dalvin Cook outscores Mike Davis by more than 7 points.
Right. Yeah, and I hear you, man. I'm looking here. Problem is that if the defense goes out and gets you 20, 30 points, and you don't have them, you feel like you're dead. And I understand that feeling in the tournament realm. But if you're banking on a defense that will get you 20 or 30 points, I don't think you're doing enough to see how you can make up for that on your builds. Your defense should not carry your team any week. And I know sometimes that it can, and it feels like it does when some people make mistakes on the slate, but they get carried by a defense that goes out there and gets 25, 30, 35 points. That was, pretty popular, and they can still hit that cash line because of it. But definitely, it's such a high variance position that if you get your other 8 players right, if you get that core strong, then it really shouldn't be killing you. And I know that Matty and I were both texting back and forth about our builds that had the Jets D at 2K, who only went out there and it got like 4 points or whatever, 0 points, whatever it was. I don't remember now. But we had, good plays at the other positions. Having Lockett and DK and Russ made up for that. So
exactly.
If you have the salary to play them, then definitely do so. But you can't necessarily go into weeks, or you can, but we don't talk about going into weeks looking at the defense and saying, oh, I have to have this defense because they're in such a nuts matchup. And it's Dwayne Haskins, right? And even though it is, the Ravens are on the road, it's Dwayne Haskins. Hell, this guy could get benched during the game. We could see Kyle Allen reunited. That's an interesting thing. And I also will say too, Matty, and this is kind of, it's off topic, but I'll bring it in, is that Ron Rivera has missed practice this week because of getting cancer treatments. And, it could just be standard. Maybe I haven't looked too much into it, but I know Jack Del Rio has been coaching the team. So you're talking about a Washington team that could come in there on Sunday with Jack Del Rio at the helm, and they could have a totally different approach than what they've been doing under Ron Rivera, potentially. So that's the type of stuff that I like to look at, especially when, looking at the slate and saying, oh, yeah, the Ravens are in a smash spot. Okay, well, they might not be playing the same Redskins team that we're used to seeing. So,
yeah, if you can fit a defense that you want to play at 4K, by all means, do it after you've made the rest of your team. But right. I wouldn't just go into your team saying, okay, I've got my 4K defense. Now let me build the rest of my squad.
Right.
I think that's ass backwards.
Yeah, man. I agree. All right. That was our slate. That is the week 4 NFL DFS breakdown from the DGen Nation. Thanks to everybody who's been sticking around. Thanks to you guys who are listening on your software platform, whether you're listening online, whether you're listening on iTunes, Stitcher, the YouTube channel, Periscope, Facebook. We appreciate it all. DGen Nation Pod, guys. Follow us on Twitter at DGen Nation Pod. You can follow the Fantasy Authority at FF_authority. We got Instagram going, Fantasy Authority, and the website, thefantasyauthority.com, where you can get all the content that we're putting out. Matty, before we sign off, we got to get this Draftkings build going. And we had somewhat of a letdown in week 2 because of the injuries that plagued us. And I thought we had a good team there. Kev wasn't on it. We were pretty solid. Still somehow ended up cashing, which is just ridiculous with having Saquon Barkley. But we got to redeem ourselves with the 2-man build this week. So let's get to it. And I will start it off here this week, and I am going to put in. I'm going to start it off at tight end, and I'm going to put in TJ Hawkinson this week.
All right, let's do it. Matt Stafford.
Okay, so we got Matt Stafford. We're plugging him in. He's 5,900. We got TJ Hawkinson. So we definitely have to run it back, right, with somebody. And let's just say we'll do Alvin Kamara right now. He's 8K. He's the healthy guy. We've seen it from him. Good matchup against Detroit. Plug in Kamara.
Marvin Jones.
All right. So we got a full game stat going on here with Marvin Jones coming in it.
I really like that game. No, I was just going to say I really like that game. I think it's sneaky.
Yeah, man. Now, we get it. It gets interesting here, as we talked about, because we don't know really what's going on here with Hopkins. We don't know the Seattle situation against Miami, what the secondary is looking like for Miami. And we just talked about it at the top, Matty, right? If you're stacking a game, you like it, you go all in, and you feel good about it. So let's get Michael Thomas in the same game because you stacking games with Seattle and Dallas, you feel good about it. But, hey, Detroit games can pay dividends too. So let's just get all the scoring in this game.
Let's do it. I like it.
We have Matthew Stafford, Alvin Kamara, Marvin Jones, Michael Thomas, TJ Hawkinson. That leaves us 4,700 remaining per position. We still have running back, wide receiver, flex, defense to fill.
All right, let me see something real fast. So it's tight, but we can make it work. Let's go with Dalvin Cook.
Oh boy, here we go. So we plug Dalvin Cook in. He's 7,600, so that leaves us 37.33.
We're gonna have to
wide
get
receiver
creative.
flex. So we are gonna have to get creative. So I think we can get creative, but we don't need to go too crazy. And let's just see what we can do here with Hunter Renfrow at 4,600.
I had already pushed the plus sign before you even said it. I knew it. I just knew it. Yep. He's such a good play this week.
He's 46. I mean, and you're looking at needing to have salary, but you feel like the floor is strong enough. If he gets some things to break his way, then you're getting into, he'll be all right to really pay off. So
yeah.
So we got 3,300 for flex and defense. So we got to go cheap D.
So that means we can play Golden Tate in the flex and punt defense.
Golden Tate in the flex. We punt defense. That's Miami Dolphins against Seattle. God willing, they go out there. Now, we're not playing we don't feel confident playing Miami if there's no Byron Jones out there. Or do you still?
I don't want to play anybody below Golden Tate. So, yeah, this is what it goes back to. You just play the 2K defense if that's what fits on the rest of your build.
Yeah, because if you get, we're playing the Detroit New Orleans stack that we're looking at trying to get 30 points from every player in that game.
It's a full-blown Detroit New Orleans stack with Dalvin Cook thrown in. And Renfrow and Golden Tate are great value wide receivers.
Right.
I would not blow up that build just to change my defense.
If you're following along, that is Matthew Stafford, Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook, Marvin Jones, Michael Thomas, Hunter Renfrow, TJ Hawkinson, Golden Tate, Miami Dolphins D. That uses all the salary. That's the team. Put it in. We got it in, Matty. And that we're going to put the stamp on the Week 4 NFL DFS breakdown. Man, it's episode 82. Appreciate everybody who's been here along for the ride for this whole time. As you took time to listen to this, maybe you're listening to it the next day, or you're listening to it during this crazy Broncos and Jets game that is just turning into wild. Sorry if you guys took the under in this game because it's already at 52, but it's just crazy. But I digress. It's the DGen Nation podcast, guys. Thanks for joining us. Like I said, follow us on Twitter at DGen Nation Pod. Reach out to us. We'll get you in that Slack chat. We got guys rating and reviewing the pod. I appreciate that. I told you guys 5 stars. You rate and review. You send us a DM. I send you $5. I've already done it this year, and I want to keep doing it for you guys as we keep going. So rate and review the pod. I'll get you some money so you can play with that on DraftKings or FanDuel or whatever you want to do with it is your choosing. You also go to the YouTube channel. I see some people watching on YouTube. Appreciate that. Like the video, subscribe so you get all the content. We got a ton of content coming you guys' way, whether you want the DFS stuff that comes usually at the end of the week, Friday, Saturday, or if you want even the season long. We got a ton of content that's been coming out. We got the weekly waiver show that's going out on Sundays. Kev and Cody have been taking that by the reins and giving you early weekly waivers that you guys should be targeting. The Start and Sit show on Wednesdays has been great. So a lot of content coming out for the Fantasy Authority. We appreciate all you guys. And I want to hear from you guys. Week 4, NFL DFS. Let's get it. Signing off for Matty Dickinson at Matty DFS. Ryan Alexander _W on Twitter. And we will see you guys next week for the Week 5 breakdown. Until then, get to these builds, get this money. Peace.